Hi, my name is Amaris Rodriguez. I'm a housing program specialist with the Office of Housing Voucher Programs, and welcome back to the HOTMA training on PVV provisions and PHA owned units. Right now, I'm going to go through attachment 8 that talks about PHA owned units. Let's get started. Previously, a PHA owned unit was only defined in regulation, specifically in the PVV regulations. Now with the passing of HOTMA, the law defines PHA owned units. Previously, the definition was more expansive than the HOTMA definition, in that if the PHA held any interest in the project, whether direct or indirect, then that project was considered PHA owned. If a unit is PHA owned, the PHA must identify and use an independent entity to perform certain functions concerning the project. The new definition of PHA owned, I should note, applies to all PHA owned units, including units rented under the Housing Choice Voucher Program, units bought under the homeownership option, and units project-based under the PVV program. And with that context, let's get into the definition under HOTMA. So what is a PHA unit based on the statutory definition of HOTMA? It's a unit that is located in a project that is either owned by the PHA, including the PHA having a controlling interest in the entity that owns the unit, owned by an entity wholly controlled by the PHA, or owned by a limited liability company or limited partnership in which the PHA or an entity wholly controlled by the PHA holds a controlling interest in the managing member or general partner. So what is a controlling interest? And I should note that HUD defined controlling interest in the January 2017 FR notice published on certain HOTMA provisions, and that was further corrected in the July technical correction to that January FR notice. So with that context, let's get into what is a controlling interest. A controlling interest is holding more than 50% of the stock of any corporation, having the power to appoint more than 50% of the members of the board of directors of a non-stock corporation, such as a nonprofit. More than 50% of the members of the board of directors of any corporation also serve as directors, officers, or employees of the PHA, holding more than 50% of all managing member interests, holding more than 50% of all general partner interest in a partnership, or having equivalent levels of control in other organizational structures. And now, under which scenario would a unit not be considered PHA owned per HOTMA? If the PHA holds a fee interest as ground lessor off the property on which the building is situated, but no ownership interest in the unit itself. So this is a situation where the PHA owns the land, but it has no interest in the project itself beyond that. If the PHA holds only a security interest under a mortgage or deed of trust on the unit, that would not be considered PHA owned under HOTMA. Or if the PHA has only a non-controlling interest in an entity that owns the unit, or in the managing member or general partner of an entity that owns the unit. That would be another scenario where the project would not be considered PHA owned. So now let's walk through some examples to try and put these concepts into practice. So on the first scenario, we see a situation where 4 of the 6 members of ABC Corporation's board of directors are also employees of the PHA. But none of those board of directors perform any work directly related to the PHA's Housing Choice Voucher or PVV programs. ABC Corporation owns the View Gardens project, which was selected by the PHA for PVV assistance. Under this scenario, the result would be that the project is considered PHA owned, and this is because PHA has a controlling interest over ABC Corporation, because more than 50% of ABC Corporation's board of directors are also employees of the PHA. Under scenario 2, the PHA owns the land where the View Gardens project is located, but PHA has no ties to ABC Corporation, which is the entity that owns the project. View Gardens is selected for PVV assistance by the PHA. In this particular scenario, this project is not considered to be PHA owned because the PHA owns only the land but has no ownership of the project or any ties that would result in a controlling interest of ABC Corporation. Now let's go through another scenario. In this scenario, the PHA can appoint 3 of the 6 members of the Board of Directors of ABC Inc., a nonprofit organization. And ABC Inc. is the owner of View Gardens, a project that was selected by the PHA for PVV assistance. In this particular scenario, the project is not considered PHA owned because the PHA has no controlling interest over ABC Inc., because they can appoint only 50%, not more than 50%, of the Board of Directors of ABC Inc. And in one last scenario, in this particular scenario, PHA holds 51% of ABC Corporation's stock. ABC Corporation owns View Gardens, which was selected by the PHA for PVV assistance. In this particular scenario, the project is considered PHA owned because the PHA has a controlling interest over ABC corporations since they hold more than 50% of the stock of that corporation. Now that we've gone through the definition, let's talk about when that definition applies. And it applies to PVV HAP contracts and AHAPs or any other HAP contract that was executed on or after April 18th, 2017, which is the day that the HOTMA provisions became effective. What happens if a project is under a PVV HAP contract executed before April 18th of this year, but due to the definitional change, it's no longer considered PHA owned? So this is a situation where the project was considered PHA owned under the previous definition. The project was under a HAP contract executed before April 18th of this year, but now due to the definitional change, the project is no longer considered PHA owned. In this particular scenario, the project remains classified as PHA owned for purposes of program requirements and monitoring until the PHA obtains an opinion from its legal counsel that the project is no longer PHA owned. And the same applies, meaning that the PHA would need to get an opinion from its legal counsel that the project is no longer PHA owned in a situation where the ownership structure of the project changes in the future, and as a result, the project is no longer PHA owned. Let's see some examples of this to help put it in context. In this particular scenario, the PHA executed a PVV HAP contract with ABC Corporation for the View Gardens project on May 1st, 2015, before the HOTMA provisions became effective. PHA holds 45% of the stock of ABC Corporation in this example. The PVV HAP contract was executed, as I said previously, prior to the HOTMA provisions becoming effective, and this particular project was considered PHA owned under the previous PHA owned definition. So the result in this particular scenario is that the PHA may discontinue the use of an independent entity for the View Gardens project after it has obtained an opinion from its legal counsel that View Gardens is not PHA owned under the new HOTMA definition. In this particular scenario, the PHA holds 55% of ABC Corporation's stock at the time it executed a PVV HAP contract with ABC Corporations for the View Gardens project. The HAP contract was executed on May 1st, 2017, after the HOTMA provisions became effective. The PHA has since sold some of its ABC Corporation's stock, and it now holds 45% of that stock. This means that the PHA may discontinue the use of an independent entity for this particular project after it has obtained an opinion from its legal counsel that View Gardens is no longer PHA owned under the HOTMA definition. So what is the PHA to do once it obtains the legal counsel's opinion? The PHA is to keep the legal opinion in your files for the length of the PVV HAB contract, the HCV HAB contract, or homeownership assistance, whatever is applicable. If the legal opinion specifies that the project is no longer PHA owned, you are no longer required to use an independent entity to perform the applicable responsibilities concerning the project. Is the PHA required to seek an opinion from the PHA's legal counsel in all cases where the agency determines that a project is not PHA owned? And the answer is that the PHA is not required, but may want to seek a legal opinion in all cases where the PHA determines that the project is not PHA owned. The only two scenarios where the PHA is required to obtain that legal opinion are the ones that I discussed previously in slides number 17 and 18. What if the ownership structure of a project changes in the future, and as a result, the project is now considered PHA owned? In this particular case, the PHA has to identify to the local HUD field office in writing within 30 days of the change in ownership the proposed independent entity that will perform the applicable independent entity responsibilities. Let's see another example to put this in context as well. In this particular scenario, the PHA held 25% of ABC Corporation's stock at the time it executed a PVV HAB contract with ABC Corporation for the View Gardens project. The PHA has since bought more of ABC Corporation's stock, and it now holds 51% of such stock. In this particular case, View Gardens is now considered PHA owned under the statutory definition, and the PHA must identify to the local HUD field office within 30 days of the change in ownership the independent entity it will use for View Gardens. Now let's talk a little bit about how this applies in Rad conversions. So what if under a Rad conversion your agency has been deemed to have sufficient control or ownership over the converting project? I should note that Rad uses a different definition of control or ownership for purposes of HUD's requirement for ownership or control of the covered project by a public or nonprofit entity for Rad conversions. This means that under certain circumstances, a particular project may meet the Rad definition of ownership or control, but is not considered to be PHA owned under PVV requirements under the statutory definition of HOTMA for PHA owned projects. In those circumstances, the PHA is not going to be required to use an independent entity. This concludes this segment, and we will move on to the next segment on independent entities.